My name is Mark Gaudet. I work for the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, and it's a pleasure to be here presenting to you today at Serene-risc 2020. In my presentation today, I'm excited to share with you CanadianShield. This is a national free cybersecurity service that CIRA has launched to protect Canadians at home, working or studying or just using the internet. I'll go through the architecture of the service, how it works, how we develop the threat feed, and some of the results, share with you some of our experience in operating the service. Before I jump into that, I'll just give you a little bit of background on CIRA. So CIRA is we operate the registry for Canada. So we operate .ca and are responsible for the 2.8 million .ca domain names. We also run registry services and a very large global DNS service. So over 35 million domain names use our DNS and over 250 top-level domains. So we operate the DNS for many countries and other generic top-level domains. About 5 years ago, we started to branch out from .ca and build a portfolio of cybersecurity products. Right now, our DNS firewall service protects more than 1.8 million Canadians. And just to give you a little more detail on the services that we are involved with at CIRA, so we have an Anycast DNS. So this is an authoritative DNS. If you looked up a domain like cira.ca, you need to go to an authoritative server to get the mappings, the actual records of the mappings between domain names and IP addresses. We also then, on the recursive side, this is the DNS service that operates inside your network. We have two products there. DNS Firewall is an enterprise-grade DNS firewall product with a portal and reporting that's used by more than 100 cities in Canada, many universities, colleges, school boards. And I'll talk mostly about this area, the DNS firewall and recursive service. And as well, we also do cybersecurity awareness training. So this is a computer-based platform that provides cybersecurity awareness training to employees and staff, as well as simulated phishing for practice, and gives all the staff their own personal scoreboard and visibility into their cybersecurity awareness training. And now I'm going to shift gears and talk mostly about CanadianShield. So CanadianShield is a DNS firewall, and what it does, it looks at all the DNS queries coming out of a network and compares them to a threat feed and allows or blocks. But one of the key things is how it uses DNS. So we're seeing at CIRA, we're promoting defense in depth and layers of defense. And we're seeing DNS over the past couple of years has emerged as really a key layer of defense as well as visibility. So within a network, every application uses DNS, whether it's a laptop, a router, every device, every application typically starts with a DNS lookup to get the IP addresses. So by looking at DNS, you see all of the activity on a network, and you can also leverage DNS for protection. So you can detect attempted access to malicious sites or phishing sites. You can see botnets on the network that are doing command and control queries and block those and disable them. So both DNS is key both for visibility and leveraging it as a layer of defense. And that's what we use in CanadianShield. And from the visibility part, we partner with a company called AKAMA. They provide the software. CIRA owns and operates all the servers. But one of the key aspects of any security product is the threat feed. And in order to develop a really good threat feed, you need lots of data. AKAMA sees roughly 3% of all global DNS queries, plus 30% of all web traffic. So they have a huge amount of data. And this dashboard, snapshot of a dashboard here, shows, is from their data science center, where they're taking in a stream of millions of DNS queries per second, analyzing them in real time, and putting them on a threat feed. So where they really focus is on domains that are seen for the first time. So they keep a record of every domain that's been queried globally from their large ISP customers in the past 60 days. If they see a domain that hasn't been queried yet, it's automatically suspicious, excuse me, and that's where a lot of the malicious activity occurs in the tail of the DNS. Domains that haven't been queried or are queried for the very first time. And they split these into two categories: domains that resolve, so there's an actual IP address. That tends to be domains that are associated with malware or a phishing website where they're registered quickly and see queries and then are taken down. Then there's a category of domains that don't resolve, and they're kind of, you can see them on the screen there. They tend to be alphanumeric or kind of random algorithmically generated domain names that tend to be associated with botnets. Our CanadianShield service leverages AKAMA software, the DNS software, as well as their threat feeds. So it can be configured on a computer, a mobile phone, a DSL router, and it's going to look at every single DNS query that comes out and compare it to a threat feed and allow or block it. So it's protecting against access to known malicious sites, phishing sites, and it's looking at botnet command and control. So if you get a botnet or malware installed on a laptop, that malware will be using DNS to look for a command and control server to get instructions. And it's typically cycling through an algorithmically generated list of domains, and eventually it'll find one that's active. So CanadianShield will see those, detect it, and block it. We launched the service back in April 2020, so it's just been 6 months in operation. And one of the key things is we protect your data, so keep it private. We've developed 3 levels of service. So the first level is just privacy. You can use our DNS service and we protect the data. We don't commercially use it. We don't sell it. And you'll see later on in the presentation, the DNS data from your household includes a ton of information about your activity on the network, as well as what devices you have, and can be used commercially and is used commercially by ISPs and other DNS providers. So our private is just use our DNS. There's absolutely no blocking, and we keep your data private. The second service is protected. So this uses the malware phishing botnet feed from AKAMA and will provide a level of cyber protection from accessing known malicious sites and phishing sites. And then the third level includes content filtering. So it blocks adult content in addition to providing the malware protection. So in DNS, what does privacy mean? So when you combine your IP address of your household or your laptop within your household, as well as your activity on the internet, you have a strong record of everything you're doing. I could tell what bank you use, what applications you use, if you have what IoT devices are in your home. And most people are unaware of where this data goes. So it's common to use Google, or it's common to use the default DNS service provided by your ISP. That data, it's useful to know who has that data, what they're going to do with it, and how it's used. By shifting to our service, at least, you are getting a protection for that privacy. This is an example of a snapshot of a typical household. It's actually from my household. And you can see what's interesting is, one is the number of queries coming out of the household. So you can see at 8 a.m., there's almost 500 DNS queries in a 5-minute span coming out of my household. Like, there's only 3 people living in the house right now. You can see some of the domains: Akamai Edge, which is a content delivery network, Amazon, Zoom. So if you dig deeper and go through the whole list of domains that get queried, you'll see that we have a Roomba. We see that we have all kinds of IoT devices as well. What we do at CanadianShield as far as protection is we keep all of the DNS data, the actual query data, but we only store it for 24 hours. And we just keep that data, as you'll see in the next couple of slides. We leverage that to help us protect the service and to try to provide estimates on how many people are using it. So every 24 hours, that data gets deleted. We don't keep any IP address information longer. And we don't censor any content. We had a privacy audit done by Deloitte, and they went through our published privacy statement, which we have on the website, and ensured that audit us against our compliance to that privacy policy. So we are doing what we say we're going to do. We're not keeping that data. And if you do hit a site that's blocked, you'll get a web page that tells you that site is blocked. So there's not any blocking under the covers. You'll get redirected to a block page. The service is set up by configuring, we have 2 IP addresses. You would configure 2 IP addresses on a laptop or on a DSL router and configure that. And what happens then is all of your DNS queries get forwarded to us, and the service will analyze them and allow or block them. There's also a mobile app, so it's called available on iOS or Android, and the mobile app will just intercept the DNS queries and forward them to CanadianShield for analysis. Both those the applications are free. Mobile apps are free. There is an in-app option to purchase encryption. So if you're on a public Wi-Fi, for $2 a month, you could purchase automatic encryption of all your data to protect it. And we did that because we've partnered with a company called Mobilize, and to get them to develop our free app, we're providing some options to upgrade to for protection, encryption on Wi-Fi. So just shift gears. One of the interesting things in running this CanadianShield service for us is that this service is open. So it's open. These are open IPs. There's nothing restricting access to it. So we knew that we were going to face attacks and abusive traffic from outside of Canada or even possibly inside of Canada. So this graph here shows some of the DDoS queries, so denial of service or attack queries that we blocked on a particular day. When we launched the service, we did a full DDoS simulation, and we're able to answer up to 800,000 DNS queries per second across the 4 servers that we have as part of this service. Actually, I'm just going to go back one slide. One of the things we also support is DNS over HTTPS. This is something new. You could look it up, but this, rather than send a DNS query over UDP, HTTPS is used to send the DNS query. And the advantage there is it does encrypt the DNS data rather than send it in plain text, which is what happens with normal DNS. So CanadianShield will support DNS over HTTPS, or DOE as it's referred to. And there are some browsers now that are shipping with support for DOE, and you can configure in a browser to send DNS queries directly to CanadianShield using DNS over HTTPS. Some of the kind of attacks we face in just operating the service, so reflection attacks, amplification attacks. I'll give you an example of a couple coming up, or in the first one here is a pseudo-random subdomain attack. So this is something that we automatically detect and block, and it's an attack where non-existent domains are queried. You can see in the DNS query name here, random domains. These domains don't exist, and the idea is that sending all of these domains that are non-existent queries to a server, it's going to try to respond and eventually get overloaded and crash. So This is one attack we see all the time, and we automatically detect and block. Then any attacks. So this is where someone would, in this case, they're doing a lookup on nih.gov for a query that gets a large answer. So they're typically using looking up a DNSSEC type record, and then they're sending it to their targets. So typically you spoof an address, send a lot of any queries, and all of the answers, which are larger than the queries, are sent to the destination. So we detect these and drop them. So we're not used as an attack vector. And then another one, this is an actual one we saw shortly after we launched the service. So this is DNS over HTTPS traffic originating from Turkmenistan. Did not even know where it was, but had to look it up. But this caused us an issue in putting a load on the DNS over HTTPS and a high level of TCP. So these are all queries. The service is intended for Canada. These were kind of malicious queries, and we set up a policy to detect and drop them. Just a 6-month summary of results. There's over 50,000 unique IPs accessing the service, and this represents roughly, taking into account the number of households versus mobile phones or laptops. This is upwards of 100,000 Canadians using and being protected by the service. The majority use the protected, I'd say 60 to 70%, maybe 10% are private, and around 10 to 20% are using the family service. So we're seeing a huge number of blocks. And one of the things I'll call out is we do partner with the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. So we take in the threat feed that they've developed in protecting the Canadian government. And then here's just an example, shows you some of the phishing domains that we blocked over a period of a few hours. As well, we can classify all of the blocks into the different malware types. So this one's calling out ChinAD, which is China adware. It's a malware that displays ads directing mostly for the Chinese market. You can see an example of the domains that are blocked with this one. And just to summarize, DNS is a really good layer of defense, both to see threats as well as to block access to malicious sites and disable botnets. CanadianShield's a free service. Take a look at it. It would be great for employees working from home to add a layer of protection at home, or students studying. Provides protection from malware, phishing botnets, and increases your privacy by protecting your DNS data. Thank you.